Welcome back to the Daughters of the Moon podcast. We're grateful that you can join us for another week.
We sure are.
And we're very excited today. We have Heather Scott on with us. I don't have a bio on Heather. So, Heather, can you give us a little bit of your bio, how you got started on your journey, and what's brought you to the point where you're at now?
Sure thing. My name is Heather Scott, and I currently live in Western Canada. I have a background in education, and I've worked in lots of different industries. About 3 years ago, I wrote a book that was focused on the importance of self-care when parenting. And since then, a lot of my work has expanded to really understand that I believe that sustainable, sensible self-care is the underpinning of all success.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think that the self-care goes further than just with children. So that's interesting that you started there because I think that's important that we understand that. So did you talk about self-care for like as in the child or the parent or a little bit of both?
Yeah, it came out of living with two teenagers. And what I discovered is that the more I took care of myself, the more I showed up as the person I really wanted to be with them. And so, yeah, that was the beginning of the premise. And I'm a certified coach as well. So I did my certification and then I did an additional specialty in parent as coach, which is a bit of a switch on thou shalt do what I say to asking interactive questions that allow children and teenagers to start to navigate for themselves with some guidance and support as opposed to thou shalt do such and such.
Yeah, I think those days of that are kind of gone from what I can see. And I think rightly so, because I think the more we engage our youth in their own upbringing, the more that we bring them up better than we could. And I mean, in my mom's day and age and stuff, I mean, we still had a little bit of that in my house, but I know there was a lot of that out there. And those kids struggled a little bit more than we did.
Yeah, there's a very different integration that happens with humans when we get to learn and discover and integrate it for ourselves through real experience as opposed to being told about it. And I have to say I was a I'm going to experience kid, which was stressful for my parents in some ways. And you can't, you can't put them in bubble wrap. You really do need to give them the tools that will, well, I've benefited from giving them tools. And now, I've been talking about self-care for a while, and part of my self-care is doing, not daily meditation, but often. And the true turning was when one of my sons looked at me and said, "Have you meditated today?" And I was like, "No, what?" And he's like, "Would you like to go and meditate?" I'm like, "Yes, yes, I would like to do that." So, we can benefit from when we teach them, then they can turn around and support us in our care. So I like that.
Yeah. I like that too. And it was funny. I was just listening to an audiobook the other day that was written by Wayne Dyer's daughters. And they were talking about kind of growing up with him and growing up with the mom. And one of the things that I really loved in that was their mom used to meditate every day for 20 minutes. And there was a sign on the door, do not bug mom. She's meditating for 20 minutes. First I was like, that's kind of, I'm not sure. And then I thought, no, I think that's really good for kids to hear because that shows them a sense of respect, and then we're respecting the things that they want to do in return, I think.
Well, and there's a lot to be said for like discovery as a way of learning, and there's a lot to be said for modeling what you think matters. And so I've very much enjoyed adjusting my behaviors to be things that I want them to know. So my older son has been moved out for a couple of years now, and I was in touch with him and he said, "Well, I'm heading to the doctors. I need to get this checked." And I was like, "I'm so appreciative of the fact that you're going to the doctors to take care of your health." And you know, me taking care of myself has hopefully instilled in him that it's important to take care of yourself, and that will pay dividends. I'm sure we've all met older males who don't necessarily go and get the things checked they need to. And it's good to find a new way, a new pathway.
That is so true. So many men do not take care of themselves, and it's such a shame. And it's nice that you are teaching your boys that self care for you is important and they're learning how to do it for themselves because something has to be done to teach these guys. Like, come on, you need to pay attention to what's going on with you too.
Yes. I mean, we can't replace our health. It's important to nurture and be proactive and protect. And my son actually had a week off of work, just sort of a staycation, like get some things done. And he was really feeling sick at the beginning of that week off. And so I texted him and said, "Oh, I hope you're feeling better." And then I sent another text about 3 hours later and I said, "So you know that list that you have of things that you want to get done this week?" Because he's a little bit like me. And I put in brackets, "I'm just guessing here." And I said, "That list can wait because you feeling better is way more important than buying a couch or whatever it was going to be." And he wrote back, "It's like, yeah, I'm going to try and put that list aside." I was like, "Oh, look at me." That was, I wish somebody had said that to me when I was trying to power through the list of things to do when I had little kids. Or, yeah, it's important to find balance. We still need to get things done, but caring, I don't know. I come from a very different place, and I think most people come from a very different place. You know, I guess I'd check with both of you. When was the last time you dedicated time and chose something to do that would really nurture and nourish you?
Mom?
Yeah, I did that actually this morning. I took some time to just lay back, put my feet up, read a book, and just take care of me, like just rest because I'm so busy all the time that I needed to just give myself an hour of, okay, Barb, that's enough. You're going to put her down now and you're going to rest. And what happened was I had the energy later to do the things that I needed to do. A little bit swamped still, near the end because I probably rested longer than I should have, knowing I had things to do. But still, it made me feel really good about myself. How about you, Kimmy?
Well, I have a morning practice, so I meditate every morning, sometimes for 5 minutes, sometimes for 20, depends on how my day is going. But so I do have that little bit of time that I'm very selfish about, and my family knows that that's my time. And even on the weekends, they just like, here's your coffee, and we're going to leave you to do your thing. But I also joined a course that I was really, really interested in, and it's about an hour and a half every Tuesday night, and I love it. And it's just it feeds my soul because it's people that believe in a lot of the same things as me, and so I'm learning, and I'm just yeah, I'm reveling in it. So I've been doing that for about 5 weeks now, and so I do try because for a while, I have to say, I wasn't. I was like getting up. Well, other than my morning practice, I was getting up, going to work, coming home, doing chores, going to bed, rinse and repeat, right? And you forget about that. How do I nurture myself and what is that importance of that?
Yeah. So what I often work with people where they kind of know that something's off and they don't quite know what. And so I would say to your listeners, when was the last time you did something that was just for you? And um, sometimes you need a little bit of help the first few times you set that time aside, because sometimes the boundary is a little bit flexy. So if so and so comes running up to the door and has a thing they can't manage, it's a little bit tough to hold that space.
Mhm.
But you both spoke about what it's like when you invest and deal with yourself. You really get to show up differently, and that's a lot of what I talk about. Is then you get to show up a little bit more aligned with the way you would choose to be, or aligned with your values. I enjoy seeing that shift. Or you get a little bit organized, and then you can put a practice in, or you can put a class in, or you can just go for a walk and be with the trees. I mean, everybody has a different flavor that nurtures them.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And do you think then, as we grow and we allow ourselves this time to have this self-care and make ourselves a bit of a priority at that point, that it helps us grow in other areas of our lives?
Well, as I mentioned, I spoke about the connection between self-care and parenting in this first book of mine. And what I believe now is that self-care allows you to be a more productive employee. Self-care allows you to be a more thoughtful partner. Self-care allows you to show up for your friends differently because you're showing up where you've dealt with yourself as much as you can in that moment. And it frees you up to offer the extra. There, a woman that I know who talks about self-care, she always says, you pour from the saucer. So if you pour into a teacup, you pour until it's full, and you only pour to others if it's coming off the saucer, which is overflow. And you said a word earlier, Kim, that was selfish. It's a little bit selfish, and it's a funny thing for me. Um, I don't think that self-care is selfish. I think that it's one of the kindest things we can do for people that we care about. Because if I take care of myself and I show up, I'm going to be going down and making dinner for my sons. When I take care of myself, I show up there happy, fulfilled, engaged, interested to hear about their day. If I'm depleted, and I mean, it happens. So, I mean, it's not a perfect scenario, but if I can take care of myself a bit, then I get to show up in a way where I truly get to connect. And I think that for our loved ones, we really want, I'm sure you are mother daughter, you want each other to be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so if Kim, you take care of yourself such that you're happy, it's actually a gift for your mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
Vice versa. Yeah.
It is. It's so true.
So I
It's
watch
so
that. When I show up joyful or I'm dancing in the kitchen, my kids are like, oh, well, mom's good. Like,
Not have to worry about her today.
She's crazy, one of the two.
a little. I mean, I have told them that they get their weirdness from me. I mean, you kind of have to own
fair.
it,
That's fair.
Yeah.
Yes,
but,
you do have
but
to own it.
there are certain pillars that I believe are part of becoming aware of self-care. And the first one, I think, is eliminating the guilt of choosing to care for yourself. The second one is offering yourself, and this is for everybody listening. Holding on to guilt doesn't help anyone. Caring for yourself is, I understand there is sometimes guilt associated, but we all know in our brain that me going to the doctors when I need to is not something I need to feel guilty about. Forgiving ourselves. So I wrote the book after I came through this family situation where there was an illness in my family. And I kept talking to everyone about self-care, but I didn't take care of myself. So I had to forgive myself that, I talked a great talk, but I didn't walk that walk. And then the last one that I talk about when I do workshops about this kind of thing is giving yourself permission. So who do you need to hear from? What do you need to hear? Can you get, I would always suggest people to get a buddy. So I used to have a friend who she and I would text each other a lot during COVID. And we've lost touch now, but during COVID, we weren't having a lot of contact. And she would text sometimes and say, I am so exhausted. I just need to have a nap. I would be like, that sounds like it would be a good choice for you right now. And we had such flexible work schedules. Like, you can make it up later because now is when you need it. And so having a buddy that can reinforce you giving yourself permission when you need to is pretty important, because I don't know about you, the inside of my brain is sometimes not friendly.
Yeah, I don't think
A
most
lot of
people would want to
opinions.
be in mine for a few minutes.
Yeah, a lot of opinions at times.
Yeah, and I think I love what you said about forgiveness, because that's something that I've been working on, because of course, you raise your children and you raise them with the knowledge that you have at the time. And no, we're not perfect parents. And because there is, no handbook. Here's how to
I
raise.
know. No.
And I've looked back through this now, especially as I'm maturing in age, and I look back and I think, ooh, I didn't do that right, and I didn't do that right. And you know how you just get very self-critical and very start putting all of that on you. And I'm like, okay, but did I do the best I could? Did I know better? No. Okay, well then I need to forgive myself for that and know that I was there for who I could be at that particular time. And, I've had conversations with my boys and they've been like, Mom, you were a good mom. Like, let it go. Right. So I
Yeah.
love that forgiveness because I think that's so hard for so many of us to realize that as we hit the different stages in our life, how much we grow and how much more we know. So you kind of not have to, but you should, I think, forgive that person, that little girl, that young teenager, that young mother, that young father, that whomever you are, wherever you are in life. That's so I loved what you said about that.
Well, and I mean, if I said to you, here are the things I did as a mother, the best I could, you'd probably forgive me in a heartbeat. Be
Mhm.
like, Heather, you did what you could with the information you had. So that's one of my favorite questions to ask when I'm coaching is, well, if the same thing was happening to me, what would you say to me? And people are so compassionate with others.
Uh-huh.
And so that's the real challenge is how can we be kind to ourselves? And we're I'm a much happier person when I can let go of heavy energy sucking baggage. I mean, we all have it. And the nice thing is when you can become aware of it and have some support or take a class or attend a workshop or do some journaling and get free of some of it. Because our life is happening right now. And if you can let that energy that's tied up in that, you get so much more energy in your day.
That's true. Very true. So what made you decide to write the book on it?
What made me decide to write the book? I was just coming out of quite an experience of parenting. There had been a big event that happened because I'd been sharing custody of my boys, and one of my sons came to live with me. And that was a big adjustment because I'd shared custody for years. And he was going through puberty, and I was starting through perimenopause. And the two of us were just, it was a lot of hormones, I'll say. And so there were challenges and there were things going on. And I realized that I was doing much better if I took care of myself a little more because there were challenges, but coming with a fuller cup was better. And then I was at a conference and there was somebody there who was talking about how, here's how to write a book and here's what my publishing company does. And I spoke to a couple of people and one person said, do you think you'd enjoy it? Do you think it's an experience you want to have? And I did. I wanted to have that experience. And the way that I wrote it is that um, I tell stories about my experiences, and then I have 2 or 3 coaching questions at the end of each chapter to say, like, have you considered this or what about this? So that it's not really workbooky, but if you wanted to journal on these questions at the end of each chapter, who knows what might come to light? Who knows what you might notice?
I really love that because I have one deck of cards that I use in the morning, and they pose a soul question at the end of the what the card means. And I love it because then I usually reflect and journal on that because it does make you think and it does put you into that space. And and sometimes it goes down to the negative, and for myself anyways, because I don't like to do that, it's like, okay, how do you flip this around? And do I need to forgive myself? Do I need to just let it go? Is there something that I need to work on to be able to make me feel in a different way to go down that journey? So I love that you did that in your book because
Oh,
I think that's so important as a self-reflection when people are reading something like that of how does it play out into my own particular life?
Mhm. I also had the experience in the last 6 months where, the book has been out since November of 2021. And in the last 6 months, like a person that I met briefly who moved back to Montreal contacted me and said, I read it and it was great or whatever. And a cousin messaged me in July and out of the blue said, I'm reading this book. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was just traveling and someone in my tour group bought it and read it and gave me feedback on it. And I was like, oh, you just never know. That's another nice thing about creating that kind of content is it's just out there.
Mhm.
So did you always have a passion to write, or was this just something that you were like, I just think that I'd like to try this creative outlet?
I have always loved reading a lot. I wouldn't say I had a burning desire to write until this topic came along. And someone that I've been creating sort of a co-project, which I'll share about later here if people are interested in joining a community of people. She recently questioned me about what about another book? What about this topic? And what about, and I was like, oh, like I really didn't have like, and number two's coming out next year. I never really had that energy to it. Um, I think that there is something to be said for the transition that you go through as you're parenting children and you have to kind of find yourself again after you disappear into really little kids. But there's also another phase that happens when parents are shifting and 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 my parents' role is shifting or changing and my role with them is like all of the agreements are getting rewritten or circumstances change. I feel like there's something there, but I don't know. Sometimes something's interesting, but there's not necessarily a burning desire for it at the time.
Mhm.
I like to kind of wait and let it be organic.
Yeah.
Yeah, very nice. Yeah. So what's your second book about? The same kind of thing or
Well,
yeah, a hint of it?
I actually I made a few notes about some of the hurdles that I've experienced during this, talking about self-care, writing the book. I'd done workshops where basically what I do is I hold time and space for people who are wanting to even explore the topic. Because if somebody hasn't been taking care of themselves and they sort of, come up to the workshop and they're like, hi, so I need to take care of myself. Like it takes time and space to find out about them and have them reconnect with themselves because if they're disconnected, it takes a minute to, recognize that, okay, I'm going to have these 2 1-hour time slots each week and I get to choose what I create in those. There's a lot of value. So I actually in my other career I do organization and planning and calendar management and setting priorities and tasks and stuff. And what I often find is people are very willing to pay to get their calendars organized, their meetings set, tips and tricks for getting their schedules, so they're on time for appointment, that kind of thing. And that for me is like breathing in and out. So if people are interested in learning how to get organized, that's another side of what I do. But what I often find is the more you get organized, people are like, well, you know what? Now I've solved these three things that used to take up this evening. Now I got an evening. Now I want to put something cool in there. And that's when self-care shows up and people are like, oh, I could actually do something that, feeds my soul. And I would say that what I've noticed and what I'm considering for the next topic is and it's not really fun to talk about, but when things happen in life that are very, very serious or shocking, where someone gets a diagnosis or somebody loses a job or some major life change occurs where it's a shock and it's a huge impact to life, that's really when absolute critical self-care has to happen. And I've watched that over the last couple of years with a couple of different circumstances. And um, it's like next level of self-care. And so I'm considering doing some work on when big things happen like that. What are some basic coping mechanisms? What's an easy, manageable, somewhat flexible framework that people could put in to place? You know, when something really serious happens, I'm sure everybody listening, I'm sure both of you have had times you're like I probably shouldn't be driving right now. I'm in too much shock. This is really scary, sad, upsetting, whatever. You need earlier this year, I had something happen and I had to set alarms to drink water. I had to set alarms to remember to eat. I had to really manage myself in the caring way because if I stopped taking care of myself, it was bad news almost, you know, within hours. I was like, oh, I'm super anxious or I'm not coping well. And it's like, oh yeah, I haven't drunk any water. Or, those kinds of basics that I'm going to take a drink of water now. Everybody listen, time to take a drink of water. That's how our
Right?
bodies function.
Well, exactly. And it's so important because I think we often hurry so much through our days and ignore those things that we need to do. And I think it's important. So, do you have any tips that you could give to the followers about ways that you can start to do self-care, especially because I do think for a lot of people, it is really, really scary to think. I'm going to take care of myself. And so I just wondering if you have any tips that you could offer.
Yeah. Tip number one is to be in communication with people in your life who matter to you and who will support you.
Mhm.
So, talking to people who care about you, will support you. I talked a little bit earlier about like accountability buddy system where, Kim calls Barb and Barb calls Kim, like, okay, I need to take a nap and I'm going to rest for an hour. And, like sometimes you need that. And I actually tell a lot of my clients, when you complete a task that you really wanted to, or when you actually self care, you go to the yoga class, you read your book, whatever. Sometimes
Yep.
texting me after is something that I offer because it's not like I need to know, but sometimes knowing that you're going to do that helps you do it.
Hmm.
True.
I actually did a really little self-care thing for myself today. And that's the other funny thing is when people find out that I, teach and talk about self-care, they're like, well, I go to yoga. I'm like, okay, that's great news. I mean, if yoga does it for you, that's awesome. I personally like Qigong, and I have a person I follow, and she gave me a recording of her class because she's been away. And I spent between 8 and 8:45 today doing Qigong and meditation with her 45-minute recording. And I swear so many times, I'm like, well, I could unload the clean dishwasher. Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to stay here. Oh, I could respond to this text that I just got from my son about tonight's dinner. No, I'm doing this. So I guess I'm sharing this to normalize that just because I talk about self-care and I think it's important doesn't mean it's super easy. We're all humans.
Mhm.
It's so, and sometimes I do role play with people when I'm working with them because somebody will say, okay, well, I'm going to spend 2 hours on Friday night, scrapbooking, if that makes them happy, for instance. And then I do role play. Hi, Suzanne, oh my gosh, I'd love to have you over for a glass of wine. Da, 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 da. Like you have to practice saying no, Suzanne, I have another commitment. But often we don't view the commitments that we have to ourselves the same way.
That's true. I've actually heard people say you should almost, especially if you're like someone that likes planners and likes, but literally schedule yourself in for, from 8 till 8:30, I'm going to do Qigong. I'm going to have a bath. I'm going to read my book. And whatever happens, I'm sorry, I'm already busy. I can't do those other things unless, I suppose there is always some circumstance if it's a life and death, but unless somebody's like dying or bleeding, really, we
Yeah.
need to make, I think, that self-importance in our schedule for ourselves. And I think sometimes by scheduling it in, it makes it more of like it needs to happen because we've put it in there.
Yep.
Agree. And all those people who do the, oh, Kim, you meditate in the mornings. Well, it must be nice. We really need to minimize the contact with those kinds of people because what I've cultivated is compassion for them. They're making that comment because they haven't found a way to create it for themselves.
That's right.
So it's really just that they want that. And but I also don't give much energy to that because nobody needs a naysayer when you're trying on a new muscle. And that's what I find is like, okay, I'm going to say no to my son. Like he asked me to drive him somewhere last year before he was driving. And I had said repeatedly, like, okay, if you want me to drive you places, you need to communicate with me because I need to organize my day, my life. If I come home and have a glass of wine, which actually I never do, but I find many people can relate to this,
Mhm.
is that if I have a glass of wine, I'm not driving you anywhere because that's just my comfort zone. If you communicate with me about it, I might do that. But saying no to those kinds of things, I find for me, having the preliminary conversation saying, this is the communication that I expect in order to, consider or commit to this, it helps me to say no on the other side if I've given that disclaimer.
Yeah. And I love how you said that because I actually had that conversation with some girls at work because I have a morning practice and so I meditate, I journal, I dream journal, I pull a couple of cards for my day, and that's what I do every single morning. And I get up early so that I have that time to do that because it's important to me. And they said, well, oh yeah, you do that thing every morning, right? And I'm like, yeah, I really love it. Right? Because I'm not going to give you area to move into my thing and put any negativity on it. Yeah, but you don't really have to do it. I'm like, yes, yes, I actually do have to do that. That is part of my day. I'm not making excuses. I'm not going to, give that away, that power. Yes, I absolutely do. So, it was funny when you said that because it made me think back to that situation, right? Where it's like, no, this is part of what makes me, because I show up actually different when I do that than if I don't.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, I could talk about this for a long time. So I don't know if you have any more questions. I could just keep saying things, whatever
That's
works
okay.
for you guys.
Yeah, no, like I think anything that helps people understand, because I do see that a lot with people, they don't make themselves a priority. They don't put in that self-care. And I've certainly been guilty of it in the past and even currently. Like there is sometimes that I get on, other than my morning thing, get on that hamster wheel and then, you start different things click in your head. So for me, one was, yay me, I raised really super independent children that don't want a lot of communication because they live their own lives, which is great. But I'm in the moment of my life right now where I'm looking for connection. And so I am, saying to them, it's important to me that we have this connection. And so we're honoring each other by having that. And it's not, I don't feel like it's making them do that, but I need that. And that's part of my self care. And so I think where you were saying, having that accountability, but reaching out to people as well to say, this is what I need for myself and for my mental health, for my spirit, for my joy every day. So, can you talk a little bit about that and how people can kind of put that into play?
I think that I think the first thing needs to be that they want it. So anybody listening, you know, do you want to take more care of yourself? Do you want to put yourself as a priority in your schedule. And something that I experience at times, and I respect that because people have a certain amount of energy that they can expend, and people have a certain amount of money that they can expend. So both of those go hand in hand. And
I do.
what
That's
I
true.
find is that there are very few times with a certain demographic. I mean, we're very privileged here to be contemplating me taking care of myself. I mean, I'm not in survival mode. I don't have to walk for water. Like, we do live in a very privileged society. What I find is that many people, um, you know, Suzanne is not going to go out without dance lessons, but sometimes the mom or dad is not really taking care of themselves. So the child's going to get the thing that the parents think that is important, and they put themselves last. And
Mhm.
I don't really, I think people have to be open, and I think they have to be willing to understand that sometimes they're going to have to invest in themselves, and not everybody's at that stage. And I've met people who they really think it's a good idea, but they're just not willing to make that choice. And classes or lessons, or buying a bunch of art supplies, or joining a workshop where you learn some journaling prompts and techniques on how to create boundaries around your time. I mean, it has to be a choice. And some people say yes, and some people, explain to me that it's just too much. And I'm like, it's going to be too much until you feel that it's a high enough priority that you will then make that the top choice. And so people asking themselves honestly how much they actually want to create or change is a good starting place. And what advice, having that supportive person, minimizing the contact with the naysayers, or the, I call it the energetic eye roll. Oh, you're going for a massage. Oh, like, oh. And I have an amazing massage therapist. She used to travel, so she used to come to my home. And now she has a beautiful studio, and so I go to her. And it's so cute because every time I go there, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so glad I made this appointment. She's like, you should thank yourself. That was a smart choice. I'm like, I will. That is great. Because I don't know, you both have likely experienced many different modalities, but just a great massage with somebody who is a wonderful human and caring and kind and has that energy. It's an amazing gift. It
It is.
really is.
It is, and I think, it's funny because right now at work I've taken on a little bit of a different role, and so doing some sort of event things, and so it's really interesting because I'm also seeing how many free things are out there, where our libraries are offer all these things for free, art classes and sewing classes, and there's all kinds of different businesses that, as much as there's some things that charge. So if you don't have money, I get that, but there is these other ways, you could go potentially, maybe not. I mean, everybody's circumstances is different, but you could maybe go and invest in some markers and some paper and draw if that's what you're interested in at the dollar store. You could go for a walk in nature and create things out of things that you find out in nature. So I think, yes, money is definitely for a lot of people that is a holding back factor. But I think when you really come down to the bare bones of self-care for myself anyways, it doesn't have to cost anything. It might just be taking 5 minutes to yourself to breathe in the corner just to continue on with your day. Not, and I think that's, people get so wrapped up in self-care has to be all these exuberant things, and it really can be those little things.
Yeah,
Well,
like a hot bath,
what's that?
like a nice hot bath,
Oh,
just laying back
absolutely.
and relaxing and just letting it happen. That's
Oh,
beautiful.
well, I'm sure you both had times where you got to a destination and your kids were asleep in the car. I'm like, I'm going to take this 10 minutes and just enjoy the silence. I mean, an extra 5 or 10 minutes in the garage. I mean, that saved my evening a few times because, you're going from full-time work to putting dinner on the table and homework and all the rest. Yeah, having a few quiet minutes is sometimes the difference.
Yeah, it absolutely is.
Yeah, and everybody has a different flavor too, is what I would really say. So, Barb suggested the hot bath. I have medical coverage, so for me, a massage is covered. So that was my choice. And what would be your preferred, like, ideal self-care?
Hmm.
You have a practice, but like over and above that, regular.
Well, I do love a good massage, I'm not going to lie there, but I really do love a good sound bath. So that for me, because even if I really love to go to them in person, that would be my favorite ultimate. But even just to, get the headphones on and just listen to whatever the music is and just relax with that, that probably for me would be my absolute favorite.
Yeah. Music for me is mine. Whether exercise with it, walk with it, or whatever. Music gives me a sense of peace and calm, and it puts me in perspective because I have all different tunes that I listen to, so it gives me highs and lows that I can be with at the same time. But it makes me think about how I need to be working with me too. And I often exercise when I listen to music. It just gives me that peace of mind and joy. Gives me a lot.
Yeah. And when you get that sense of calm, whatever it is that brings that to you, there's just it's just like a nicer energy around it. And I feel better when I have that. Sounds like you both feel better. I think everyone feeling, everyone doing a bit of self-care for themselves, feeling a little bit better. I mean, that could improve traffic, ladies. That could improve the grocery store experience. That could improve kids at school. That could improve so many different things. And it's so many different flavors. That's the thing that I love about self-care. So if I say to you, hey, Kim, you know what the best thing for you for self-care is a Pilates class. And you're like, huh, that is not what I would have picked. And that's what I like about self-care because I'm Heather. I get to pick what's going to nurture me the best in that moment. And it can change from day to day.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to sit and read a book. Sometimes I need a hot bath.
Yeah.
Sometimes I want to put my headphones on and disappear into what do you call them? The frequencies, which is
Yeah.
so
Yeah,
restful.
I love that too.
And I'll be honest, some days, like for me, and I don't know if this is going to change as I have more and more of an empty nest, but an unscheduled Saturday, I
Oh,
don't have
yeah.
anything to do. Oh, I have to watch that I don't overdo it because then I'm like, oh, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this because there's that freedom and it's almost like my creativity starts to flow because I can go here, I could do this, or I could visit, or I could cook, or I don't know. I can tell that's a good start to my weekend is I'm like, I have nothing on tomorrow.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is a very nice thing for sure. I do enjoy that myself actually. So
Oh, there you
Uh,
go.
yeah, well this hour is flown by. I can't believe it. So
Yeah.
um
Oh,
can
yeah.
you if you had a final wisdom or some inspiration for the followers, what would it be?
What's the final inspiration? Take the time to check in with yourself because you're worth it
Mhm.
and really listen to what you need because you getting it is going to benefit you and everyone around you.
That's right. So do you have your book with you there so we can see it?
I do. And I wanted to mention a few ways to connect with me if you're, I know
Yes.
that it's going to be airing in January. So it's the start of a new year. And sometimes that's a resolution time. And sometimes I'm going to pick something for me. So if people want to explore that, that would be great. This is my book. It's called Gentle with
Beautiful.
You. And what I
Beautiful.
learned when I named this book is that I was gearing up to be gentle with me. Because nothing like saying you're going to talk and teach about something and then getting schooled about it. Oh, you're going to talk about self-care? Oh, we're really going to have to teach you how to take care of yourself. And so, what I can do for those listening, if they'd like to reach out to me and they're interested in having a copy of the book, is I could offer the book at half price plus shipping. So that would be $10
Oh,
Canadian. So
Nice.
I'd be
That was
happy to do
very
that.
generous. So thank you.
Oh, well,
Appreciate that.
it's my pleasure. And like I say, it's been out for a while and it's just nice to consider some parents being gentle with themselves. I like that idea. And then I also wanted to say that I'm just in the process of launching a new website with just my name because that's less confusing in life. So I would need to give you a different email for people to reach out about that. So
Okay, sure. If you want
um,
to just let me know when you have that, and we'll make sure that goes in the show notes so
okay, that sounds
people
great.
can do that. Do you have any social medias where people can contact you or?
Well, there were a few kerfuffles. So I think what I'll do is just put my email in the show notes for
Okay,
when it's going to be produced in January.
perfect. Yeah,
And then
we'll definitely put those in.
I also wanted to mention, like I mentioned about how people want to get organized so that they can find times to actually explore self-care more. I do private coaching sessions on that.
Okay.
Um, and usually it takes, humans don't change in a minute. So usually I offer a 6 session package so that they have a chance to sort of identify what's so, find the little sticking points, and then have some time to practice implementing new techniques for that. And I'm going to be running a master class on this sort of, I don't know if I'm going to call it like serious self-care or crucial self-care in March. So if
Okay, very
people have,
nice.
big life transitions, big events where they're really wanting some company on their journey of creating more self-care, that's going to be happening in March. And then the last thing I wanted to mention is I'm a member of a group called Season Synergy, and it's about living in alignment with the seasons. So living locally, being connected globally, traveling sustainably. It's just very much like in the rhythms of the earth. And Season Synergy, we have a session each solstice and equinox. So if people are interested, it's a group on Facebook, and they're welcome to find me there.
Perfect.
okay.
That's great. I will put all of that in the show notes. And so if somebody's interested in your coaching session, they can reach out to you through your new website once you have that all up
Yes,
and going
yes.
then.
Pardon me?
They can reach out to you when you have your website up and going.
What I'll do is I'll share with you after this recording the email they can use.
Okay.
And I anticipate that the website will be launched in the new year. So, thank you.
Good.
Wonderful.
Good for you.
Wonderful. Well,
Good
we
for you.
appreciate you joining us on our website or
Yeah.
on our website, sorry, on our
Our podcast.
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 Long,
It's been
been a
so
long day, eh,
nice.
Kim?
Oh,
Yeah,
goodness.
thank you for the invitation. And I really appreciate being able to talk about this. It's just something that's close to my heart. And I find that even if even if one person starts taking better care of themselves, it just makes such a difference. Thank you.
Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Well, thank
Thank you
you,
for
and we'd
sharing.
love to have you back anytime. So thank you so
Okay.
much.
Oh, thanks so much, Kim. Thanks, Barb.
Yeah, you're
You're
welcome.
welcome. Thank
And
you so
everybody
much.
else, we will see you the next time.
You bet you will.
Sounds good.